Hello and welcome to today's Logistics Management Podcast. My name is Michael Levans and I'm Group Editorial Director for Peerless Media's Supply Chain Group, which of course includes Logistics Management Magazine. And today I'm joined by Jonathan Daniels. And Jonathan is CEO and Port Director for Port Everglades. And that's a self-supporting enterprise fund of Broward County, Florida, which generates more than $33 billion in economic activity and supports nearly 10,000 direct jobs annually. So welcome, Jonathan. It's great to have you with us today. Now, while
Great to be here with you.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to today's conversation, Jonathan. While Port Everglades is the world's third busiest cruise home port, however, logistics management readers are probably more aware that it ranks among the nation's leading container ports and one of the busiest in Florida. In fact, Port Everglades handles an average of 1 million TEUs annually, serves as a gateway to Latin America, the Caribbean, Europe, and Asia, and has direct access to the interstate highway system, as well as Florida East Coast Railway and their near dock 43-acre intermodal container transfer facility, which I've actually have been on, which is amazing. Okay. And that's an attribute that's certainly appreciated by shippers moving freight in through this very important southeastern gateway. Now, as we've been covering extensively over the years, investment across U.S. ports is essential to the growth of the economy, as well as the streamlining of supply chain operations. And Port Everglades is obviously no stranger to these efforts. In fact, Port Everglades is currently undergoing a $3 billion expansion program to expand berth and crane capacity and deepen and widen channels to handle future growth in its container traffic. And now it's that expansion and those efforts to differentiate the port. That's where we're going to be spending a fair amount of our time today in this discussion with Jonathan Daniels. So again, Jonathan, we're thrilled to have you with us today. And as I mentioned, Port Everglades is, a leading container port in Florida and among the most active cargo ports nationally. Now, from your sort of position there, sort of a high-level view, what do you believe sets the port apart these days?
Great. Again, Michael, great. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity and allowing me the opportunity to be here with you. And I think when people think Port Everglades, of course, as you mentioned, people think about the big cruise ships that come in, and as you had talked about, we're the third busiest cruise home port this year. We're preparing for probably 4 million passengers move through the port. But some of the things that are, in a sense, forgotten about what we do is and I'll touch very, very briefly on the fact that we're the largest petroleum and energy port in the state of Florida. Okay. So if you drive or fly through South Florida, you will use a product that moves through our pipelines and moves through our manifolds. But the container operation really begins to set us apart. And while a lot of people certainly understand what goes on at Port Miami and the great job that they do down there, Port Everglades consistently now is above 1 million TEUs on an annual basis and growing. And really what sets us apart is the fact that we understand exactly what we mean to the supply chain. We're not going to be a Savannah. We're not going to be an LA, Long Beach, or New York. But the fact that we isolate ourselves into some very specific trade lanes, primarily moving north-south, we'll talk a little bit about that later. But we have really, really set ourselves apart with some personalized development opportunities. We focus on north and south. The fact that we move about 150,000 TEUs on an annual basis in the perishables market. We are the number one perishables port in the state of Florida, and we rank in the top 4 or 5 nationally. And our position, close to Central America, South America, really has set us apart, and our terminal operators know that as well. We work under an organic growth strategy, and while it's wonderful to go out throughout the world and actually bring in that brand new shiny car, for lack of a better term, you want to bring in that new line, you want to bring in that new trade lane. The fact of the matter is, we work with Port Everglades Terminal, we work with Florida International Terminals, King Ocean, Crowley, and even the other smaller ones to say, what do we do to help you? What do we ultimately do to help your business development activities? And then we blend that with our master vision planning and ultimately the implementation of what currently is a $3 billion master vision plan, which focuses on exactly what they need to do to make their business prosperous.
Yeah, Jonathan. Yeah, you mentioned that the port's bread and butter really is that trade with Latin America and the Caribbean. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's new on that north south lanes? I know how important that is for the port and port operations.
It is, and again, we talk about some of the large opportunities in January. We kicked off the CMA CGM Americas XL, West Coast South America into East Coast North America. We're the first port of call entering the East Coast, and again focuses on perishables. But the recent announcement by ONE, and again ONE is primarily that East West traffic.
Yeah.
But their first foray into South America on the west coast of South America, into South Florida, and they looked at a multitude of ports in Florida, and ultimately decided to come into Port Everglades. It's their FLX service, is
hmm
what they call the tasty treats from the west coast of South America, whether it's
Yep.
on shore or in the water. And they selected Port Everglades as their only Florida call.
Gotcha.
So that will commence this year. We took, those are some of the larger carriers, but recently
hmm
Ship-a-Lily, HLS. So Ship-a-Lily to and from Venezuela, HLS coming out of Honduras.
hmm
17% of all the products that move to and from Latin America move through Port Everglades, and we're number one when
Right.
it comes to Latin American trade
hmm
in the United States. So we
hmm
continue to push that. Again, it's where we really started as a container port, and it's what's really maintaining our focus. And while we've brought in some additional services, it's really that north-south trade that
Right.
continues to push and fuel our growth.
Yep, absolutely. Now, what about some of the port's plans to attract some more of that business on the east-west lanes? You briefly mentioned that, Jonathan. What are the plans to move forward there?
It has been in the last 2 years. We've been successful, and again, that's working with our terminal operators as well as the lines that call here. The recent announcement of the Santana service
hmm
coming out of Southeast Asia into and through the Panama Canal as part of their around the world service. South Florida, they ended up initially starting at Miami and then moved those calls to Port Everglades.
hmm
That goes along with some of the other work that MSC has been doing, the Turkey Greece service, the
hmm
former service, the Indus 2 service. And I think what they're doing is finding out that with two strong cargo ports and container ports in South Florida, where primarily that had been handled through Miami, they're finding Port Everglades as an additional opportunity. Neither port is
hmm
large enough to be able to handle the cargo, whether it's north, south, or east, west, for this consumption zone. 6 million citizens down in South Florida and continuing to grow. So when you consider that, they're finding out that Port Everglades is a viable option
Sure.
with the type of activity that we have going on, the immediate access to 595 and 95, but as well as
Yeah.
the intermodal container transfer facility, as was mentioned. So we have that
Yeah.
intermodal mesh that gives these large lines and these large vessels and these multinational a couple of options, and they are finding recently that Port Everglades is the port of choice in
Right.
South Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Now, if we've been covering, Jonathan, over the last few years too. Obviously, ports across the U.S. and the globe, they have a lot of common pain points, such as that limited land for expansion, rising sea levels. We're reading a lot about that, and of course, container ships that are getting bigger and bigger and heavier and heavier. Now, how is Port Everglades addressing these now common challenges?
Yeah, it is something all of us, and it doesn't matter whether you're in Shanghai or whether you're in
Right.
South Florida. We're
Yeah.
dealing with the same issues, and those are conversations I have with my friends in Miami, Tampa,
hmm hmm
Jacksport as well. We have a general lack of land. We are hemmed in by, of course, the Atlantic Ocean on to our eastern boundary, to the city of Fort Lauderdale north, by an absolutely fantastic natural mangrove area to our south,
Yeah.
and Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport on our west. So within that, we're working with the terminal operators. They are deploying new technology, new appointment systems to
hmm
get
hmm
to get cargo in more expediently for us to be able to get that out. We're also working with them on densification plans and
hmm
looking at offsite areas. Now with our east-west trade lanes, one of the biggest issues we're dealing with are the amount of empties coming out of South Florida that need to be positioned back in Asia. So we're
Yeah.
looking at an empties yard just outside of our gate to
hmm
join two of the new warehouses that are being built by the private sector. So
Yeah.
not all infrastructure development is falling on the shoulders of the port. We're working with the private sector to make sure that they are also meeting some of those needs. As far as sea level rise, again, all of us are having to adjust to the new norm, and that's dealing
Yeah.
with sea level rise, the environmental considerations. We
Hmm.
recently received two grants, one from the federal government, one from the state, and those are going to be used for bulkhead replacement. But all of our planning takes into consideration looking about 70 years out. And that's
Hmm.
looking
Wow.
at a phased approach that allows us the opportunity to address where we are now, but allowing us to be able to build those bulkheads up in a couple different phases as is necessary
Yeah.
over time. All of us are having to deal with it. It's an expensive process, but it's a necessary process that will allow us the opportunity to be able to meet those needs into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way to do it too. In a long-term phased approach, you got to look out through the future like that. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it is.
Now, speaking of big solutions, to big challenges. Now, I've heard through the grapevine that I've heard 3 additional super post Panamax gantry cranes are coming to the port this winter. What's that going to mean
It,
for operations? That's pretty impressive. I didn't realize that.
it is, and those are going to match the three that we received a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
They're able to go in this a little bit of a different design because of our proximity to the airport. We can't have your traditional apex cranes, so ours are low profile, and they're the largest low profile cranes ever constructed and
Wow.
manufactured in the world. Allows us the opportunity to go 22 wide. So we received the
Hmm.
first three from ZPMC a couple of years ago. Those went in through the commissioning process, and actually just on day one, they became a
Hmm.
game changer for us. As
Sure.
oftentimes
Absolutely.
we couldn't handle anything more than 17 wide before. Some vessels would come in and actually have to pull back into the harbor, turn, and then come back to
Yep.
finish their operations. So we'll have the three that arrive in December, take about 60, 90 days to get back in. And that combines with the opening up of 5 new berths in our
Yeah.
Southport turning notch. Total project close to $500 million. It's the largest infrastructure project ever undertaken
Yeah.
by the port, and that
Wow.
allows us the opportunity really to address where we can now go well above that 1 point, the 1 million to 1.1 million,
Yep.
and really see the port's future in that 1.75 to 2 million TEU capacity
Yep.
range.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And jumping up that list we run every year. No question. You guys that's fantastic stuff. Now, the investments being made at the port, obviously you're going to go beyond the new cranes. What else is in the works, Jonathan? What else do you see coming down the pike in terms of those investments?
And as I mentioned, the Southport turning notch, as far as the cargo is concerned, is really
Hmm.
the bellwether for us. And it's fantastic to see that the last of the container storage yards on that project will be done first quarter of 2025. So that's on the north side of the turning notch area. It's a combination heavy infrastructure as well as environmental program.
Yep.
Is we
Absolutely.
developed 16.1 additional acres of mangroves, which is
Yep.
allowing us the opportunity to meet the conditions under our permits. Those have been taken over recently by Department of Environmental Protection, saying that project
Hmm.
is done, it's complete, it's growing like you wouldn't believe. It looks like old
Yep.
growth, and
Yep.
that's right adjacent to that $500 million of infrastructure development. And ultimately, what that means, going back to the cranes coming in, it's an
Yep.
infrastructure, it's an equipment, it's a
Hmm.
technology program that we're involved in, and we've already seen the benefits in regards to our efficiency standards. World Bank
Hmm.
comes out every year with their CPPI, the Container Port Performance Index. We actually, in 2021, we were the 116th most productive and most efficient port when it came to those standards.
Hmm.
With the new cranes coming in and some of the new berths coming online, we went from 116th to 89th in the world. And
Wow.
it's a handicap system that allows Port Everglades to be evaluated in the same way as LA, Long Beach, Savannah, New York, or even Shanghai. So
Yep.
it establishes that level playing field. But I think more than anything, to see where we are now in North America, we've gone from number 11 to number 5,
Yeah.
and
That's really
that's
impressive.
just shows that the infrastructure, the investment that's being made, it's being made correctly. It's berths,
Yeah.
it's equipment, it's technology, and it's working hand in hand with our terminal operators because they're making a sizable investment and commitment to us as well. So we see that it is from the cranes to the new berths to the new roadways that are being put in place. It's gelling to allow us the opportunity to see us go in a very, very positive direction in regards to our efficiency standards as well. And it really has become our brand standard, whether it's on cruise, energy, and certainly on the container market. That brand standard is all about efficiency.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Jonathan, we have time for just one more question. And I think a really great one, and again, is to tie back into that whole, the marine environment you mentioned before, too, and how things have been taking off, even with all that great infrastructure work going on. The environment really, the marine environment, it really tends to be front and center, obviously. Now, what's happening, right now, along with those kind of projects to ensure that the port is resilient, is keeping, that sustainable, thought process and, being a stronger supporter of the environment? What are some of the things that your team is really focusing on right now to keep that front and center? So because that's so important today.
Yeah, great. It is. It's part of what we do on a consistent basis. And you talk about resilient, sustainable. Those
Hmm.
are two of the three core components of our core values.
Hmm.
And it's never as evident as the fact that we're going through a deepening and widening process right now with the Army Corps of Engineers. We're in the final stages of our draft supplemental environmental impact statement that will really make this probably the most scrutinized but the most complex dredging project ever undertaken by the Army Corps of Engineers.
Yeah.
And while there's
Yeah.
a significant cost associated with that, I think there's a sense of pride. Is that if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right.
All
A
right.
lot of the word out on the street right now is a lot of these projects have harmed the environment in many ways. We're looking at ways in which we can take a very proactive approach, create new artificial reefs, do things that have never been done in the history of
Hmm.
any deepening and widening project. Again, it's complex, it's
Yeah.
expensive, but it is necessary for all of us to be able to do that. The ports themselves, notoriously as people in the community look at, we're front and center on the waterfront. All right. And ports are
Yeah.
very industrial by their very nature. We have to make
Hmm.
sure that industrial does not take away from the absolutely, in many respects, pristine environments
Hmm.
that a lot of us are in. South Florida, with the coral reefs and some of the damage that's occurred from some of the actions of the past, we do not want Port Everglades to be known as an organization that took away from the environment, but at the end of
Absolutely.
the day, that we actually bettered the environment.
Right.
It's the same thing that we're doing when we're taking a look at shore power, primarily for the cruise ships, but we're also talking with the terminal operators. We're talking with the carriers and defining what lines are going to be out there that are going to are going to be shore power capable, whether it's air
Yeah.
quality or water quality. Port Everglades really, I think we stand at the forefront of being an example that a lot of ports can look at.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep, Jonathan, that's a great way to wrap up today's podcast. And that's just about, unfortunately, about all the time we have left today. But Jonathan Daniels, CEO and Port Director for Port Everglades, thank you so much for joining us in the Logistics Management Podcast. That was terrific stuff.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Great. Great. Thank you. And we want to thank the Port, too, for making this terrific session possible. Thanks again and have a terrific day.